Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Arne Doornebal. I've been an Africa correspondent based in Uganda for the last 6.5 years, and I'm in the country now. I'm very glad to be here. These are the three guests. On my right is Steven Markowitz. He's the main producer of the project. I'd say maybe you can actually introduce yourself. You can probably do that much better than I.
It's true, my name is Steven Markowitz, and I'm the executive producer of the series, and there were 6 directors and 6 producers on the series.
Right. Then there's Marika. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe you can also introduce yourself briefly to the audience.
Sure, so I'm Marika. I'm the film director from Senegal.
Right. And Vincent?
Yeah. I'm Vincent Moloi, and I directed a film in Johannesburg called Beria.
That was the last film which we saw. Steven, maybe you can explain us a little bit about the project.
We started about 2 years ago with the Goethe Institute and myself. We came up with this idea to produce and commission a series of short films from the continent. And
right.
The thinking behind it was that, you know, now over half the population in Africa live in cities.
Yeah.
And we were very interested in exploring the kind of urban experience through cinema. Many films in the past have been set in rural areas, and we thought it's time to look at this dynamic ever-changing culture that's happening in big African cities, and also to create a platform and opportunities for filmmakers to get people to see their films quite widely, internationally and locally.
Right. Do you have the feeling there's been too much of a focus on, you know, stereotype rural films, as if, you know, so to speak, every African woman has a baby on her back and a bunch of wood on her head? Do you think that that kind of stereotype is something we have to get away from?
Yeah, well, look, it's part of the reality of the continent, but I think the perception of the continent internationally has been as you described it. Mm-hmm. And I think often it's been quite a static perception, and there's a need to get into a far more dynamic look at our continent, which is diverse and exciting, mm-hmm. and there's some very interesting developments. And I think often television stations in Europe and America feed off that stereotype, and many of the films made that appear on television in cinemas are made by people from outside of Africa. So we're very interested in creating opportunities for filmmakers who are moving beyond those stereotypes to look at that and then bring it to the world.
Right. Thank you. Marie, you made the film L'autre femme, mm-hmm. which was the 4th film we saw about the older man with the two women. Do you think that fits in this model of, you know, against the stereotype of older which people may have of Africa?
Yeah, I think so, because my purpose really was to tell stories, a story of 3 people. It's not, you know, it happens in Africa and in a certain settings with all the cultural codes and all that, but the bottom line is it's really it's a people story. It's really, so I think for me it was very important as well, like Steven said, to tell the story from what I know, something, you know, with my own look and how I understand it. So not necessarily, you know, fitting into what you see generally, I would say, in the media. So
right. Mm. In your film, we see the two wives actually having a greater bond together than they have with the man. Right. How controversial is that in your country?
Controversial? Okay, obviously it's not. That's not the whole purpose. I think when you think about polygamy, when a man actually takes the several wives, the purpose is to have the focus on him. So I would say that probably the fact that two women are getting together, it's not to his advantage. So I would think that in a society that's very much based on patriarchy, it's not something that's expected. Let's put it that way.
Right, well, I mean, I'm obviously asking this question because I live in Uganda.
Right.
There's a wave of anti-gay legislation all across Africa. So, I mean, it can be seen as quite courageous that you picked this theme. I mean, how did you get to do such a project?
Well, for me, like I'm very much interested in women's lives in general. I think that women are not. You don't see that many women on the screen, and also that many, especially like African women on the screen. And I'm very much interested, like in a society where I live, it's not the life of women are not really documented or anything like that. So I was very much interested in getting into the intimacy and the lives of the women at home and what they do. And to me, it made sense that the two women get together because there was like in that intimacy there was closeness and there was like a common destiny, if I put it that way, yeah.
Right.
So it made sense that they would actually get closer than they would with the man.
Right. All right. Vincent, you made the last video we saw called Berea. I believe it's named after a certain area of Johannesburg. Yes. Is that part of the changing South Africa we see of the older generation of white people who kind of get their world's getting smaller, and then suddenly we see him how he's being suddenly forced to make contact with the people in his neighborhood?
I'll say that again. Is that part of there? I missed the other word.
I'm saying we see a man who is first very much isolated. And then he has to make contact with the other people. Is that part of the new reality of South Africa?
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of many other realities. I certainly know few people like him, and I also know many other people who are not like him. For me, it was an opportunity. I mean, I don't know how to answer this without being philosophical, but for me, it's always an opportunity that you realize how privileged we are in making films, and the people that believe in us, giving us the opportunity to make the films, because all it was a thought and an observation, and next thing you know, you've written it down, and the next thing it's a film, and when you see those people, you think about them. And you never thought that, and it's something that stays with you. You never thought that other people are also observing the same thing. My colleague and I, when we were thinking about, when Stephen made the call to say we are looking for projects about cities, it's amazing how all of us had an interest in, understanding the few white people that are still left in the CBD and how they interacting with the world. And we were very inquisitive about those ones that don't interact with the world and are staying by themselves. So it was almost like a trip to understand the man's soul and what's going on in his head, because it's pretty tough.
Right.
I also have my issues. The first time I saw a white person or interacted with a white person, despite the fact that I had lived with white people in a very close proximity, like 10 minutes away or 20 minutes away, but never really had an interaction with them. So when I first interacted with them, was like, oh, so this is how these people think, this is who they are, this is what they do, because the only interaction was on TV. So, to be short, it really was part of understanding the world,
And do you agree with the necessity of showing more urban films from Africa? I mean, do you feel that in South Africa also there used to be a focus on these rural films?
Yeah. I don't think there should be a format on how you tell stories, what stories should be told and what not should be told. Stories should be told generally, whether they are in rural Africa or they are in urban Africa or anywhere in the world, and which was part of what we are trying to do, because there's not a lot of black people who tell stories about white people in the country, because there has been a drought of black stories, because previously, especially in South Africa, because previously, you know, the resources was with white people and the skill was with white people. So when we had a little bit of experience and a little bit of resources, the first natural thing is to try and tell your own story, because it hasn't been told. But you can't help the mind and the heart for its own inquisitiveness about other people, and hence we told this story for us. So it's really just an organic, natural process that drives people to tell certain kind of stories, or the opinion on the voices that they have and what they want to say about the world. I mean, one of my goal personally is to one day just do a story in Nepal, or do a story somewhere in Scandinavia with an all-white crew and all-white characters, because that's also like an exercise to try and understand human beings in general and the emotions that they go through.
Okay, thank you. Steven, just go back. The stories we've seen, I'm sure you had, when you started this project, you could choose from a whole range of filmmakers in Africa. I mean, how did you get to pick, especially these stories? What appealed most to you?
Well, it was there was a committee of Leanne Heinrich from the Goethe Institute and Ivana Kronos from Hubert Bals and myself, and I think we were looking for stories that were surprising, that were slightly unusual, that were hopefully unpredictable, and that you know, were kind of felt. I mean, you know, often you read scripts or stories and all you've got often is your instinct of what you think could work and what your vision could be for the film, with a hope. So, you know, you often go on that gut feeling. So there were a lot of kind of stories which dealt with like deep issues, and we generally tried to avoid those kind of stories. And so we looked for stories that had potential, that you know, we felt could do something different. And yeah, so that's basically it.
Right. And did you personally oversee all the productions? Did you actually go to the shootings?
No, there were each director had a producer and a production team, so we were kind of liaising with them on a regular basis, and so, you know, it was also very important to kind of empower or support local teams and not just come in from the outside and say this is how you do everything. So it was very much a balance between, you know, pushing and supporting.
Right.
So I went to the only country which I visited the location was in Lagos, in Nigeria.
Right. All right. Marie, for you, it's not, you've been in film production for quite a while. Have you seen the cinema in your region lifting off? I mean, do you think more quality films are coming from West Africa nowadays?
I think so. I think that there are not as many as I would wish there were, but I think that especially when I think of Senegal and of the story, the diversity of the stories that you're seeing is really different from what was in before, and so I think there's really this sort of a sense that there's really this sort of energy that's all throughout. I think Africa in general, but in West Africa, you can sense that there's really this drive to tell things differently and to tell our stories. I'll say from our perspectives.
Right. Now, in this case, it's been sponsored by the Goethe Institute. It's a German cultural group which is doing a lot of cultural things in Africa. Some filmmakers I've spoke to across Africa, they don't really like when NGOs or foreign organizations are involved in film because they fear that has an influence of the direction. Did you ever felt any of that kind?
That I was being the
Well, I mean, of course, there's HIVOS is also behind it. Is an organization which is focusing a lot on gay rights.
HIVOS wasn't
it wasn't in UBOS.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a later stage. But I mean, how do you see the relationship between NGOs which support film projects and the kind of the independence of filmmakers?
Well, I support it because in that particular case, I didn't feel any restrictions, or I didn't feel any what I felt was support, like what Stephen was saying. It was good too. There was pressure for sure because there was the deadlines and things, but it was good because it got us through. For me, that was very, very positive things. It was the support that I got was really great. It was fantastic. So I don't feel like it's and my particular experience. I don't feel like it took anything from what I wanted to do or the story that I wanted to tell, and maybe Vincent can say the same. Well,
I think more than where the money comes from, we should probably ask about what was the process, and the process was simple. Here's a platform. Do you want to tell your story? Tell us the story that you want to tell, and we're not going to interfere. And that's what it was. But yes, you're right. It's a debate that's ongoing, and I don't, it happens everywhere in the world where the money comes from. But making films is hard and it's tough. And I started saying I've realized how much of a privilege it is to tell to make a film because it's expensive. You're always looking for support. So if there are people that are willing to hear you out, which is what all of us want, to be heard, and you welcome it. In fact, you appreciate it. You can go into many other theories and whatnot, but in this case, it was there was no any other thing. In fact, they encourage you to say what you want to say, if anything. So it was we felt blessed.
Just to add, the project was supported by the Goethe Institute, the Hubert Bals Fund, and the Guaranteed Trust Bank, which is a Pan-African bank. And for us, it was really important to not only rely on European money, but that there was African money in this project.
Right. That's where the Nigerian bank came in. What I was wondering, have the films already been shown in Africa, and how were the reactions to that?
They screened at the Durban Film Festival, and then 3 of them were in Toronto, and this is the European premiere here. Right. I think at the Durban screening, it was very lively. There was a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. When you show a series of 6 films and you speak to people afterwards, it very much reveals their taste because they'll like one and not like the other or have different reasons. So there was a very broad range of opinion, but it was good.
Is there going to be a follow-up? Is there going to be a second round of Metropolis films?
I hope so. I'd like to appeal to anyone with money out there the Goethe Institute and the Hubert Bals, we're talking about doing it again, and we're speaking to other potential partners to raise money to do another initiative. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but the intention is to carry on.
Right. Okay. Just briefly. I was wondering, have your films been shown in your home? And of course, Durban is your home country, but have your film been shown in Dakar? And
Not
how was?
yet, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right.
So we'll do. The film is supposed to do a tour in Africa, in all the cities.
Right. Okay, and you're not afraid of any consequences, as in a.
Well, there's always, because it's a sensitive, of course, like I'm telling you a sensitive story, but it's, I'm willing to see what's going to happen, because it could go either way. For me, it really could go either way. I was very surprised when I was doing the casting and looking for actors. Like I was really stressed about finding especially the male actor, and I didn't have any issues. So.
All right.
We'll see how it goes.
I would like to thank you all very much for being here. Please give them a big round of applause.